So, about a month and a half ago, I was able to bring my Philippines leadership team at NeoWork to Colombia for our team retreat. And one of my fondest memories from that retreat is all of us coming together over empanadas. With the colonial Spanish ties, both Philippines and Colombia, even though the opposite sides of the world, they have very similar diets. A lot of the words are the same. If you go to a restaurant, it's tenedor, vaza, mesa, and empanadas are super popular in both countries. So I found it fitting to dive deeper into this with some of my founder friends about uncomfortable topics with some comfort food. Hey everyone, I am so grateful for the reception to Founders and Empanadas over the past first month. I've received a ton of questions and I'd love to dive deeper into some of my favorite ones. All right, first question. Why did I start a podcast where I eat empanadas with founders? So, about a month and a half ago, I was able to bring my Philippines leadership team at NeoWork to Colombia for our team retreat. And one of my fondest memories from that retreat is all of us coming together over empanadas. With the colonial Spanish ties, both Philippines and Colombia, even though the opposite sides of the world, they have very similar diets. A lot of the words are the same. If you go to a restaurant, it's tenedor, vaza, mesa, and empanadas are super popular in both countries. So I found it fitting to dive deeper into this with some of my founder friends about uncomfortable topics with some comfort food. All right, Jacob asks, why should I outsource instead of hiring a recent college grad? Well, Jacob, I've been through the ringer. When I was at Bird, we hired a lot of recent college grads to do support roles. And I really found that within the first 3 to 6 months, they want to be moving to roles in marketing, moving to roles in launching new cities, and don't find support roles compelling based off of what they've, received in college of, hey, A+, great, here's a trophy for doing well. And also, frankly, the prefrontal lobe isn't fully developed. There's a lot of typos that I saw when I was in that role, just lack of professionalism representing the elite level of brand that we had. And with the Philippines, the strength is that they really see support as a career, not just a job. And the pay for these support roles is comparable to what university professors are making in the Philippines. And they're able to support their whole families and really find meaning and find it compelling when they can move up into roles like supervisors or quality assurance agents. And just having that dedication and work ethic is a lot stronger. Plus the level of experience that they come from in prior roles versus what you can get from a recent college grad. All right, here's a good question. I've had a bad experience in the past with outsourcing to the Philippines where they just ghosted after a few days. How do I address that or stop it from happening in the future? All right. Well, I really started NeoWork to address this same pain point. I used to be sitting in the client's shoes and saw a really high turnover rate with these outsourced teams. And to answer your question, it comes down to onboarding and training. There's not a lack of talent overseas, but there is an inequality with how they are trained and onboarded, and frankly, how they're managed as employees. I've seen some crazy shit when it comes down to BPOs doing things like not even giving toilet paper to their employees because they were afraid that they would steal it. So the number one thing that I addressed when starting this business is let's approach it like the best level of benefits and employee recognition that top startups in the US give. Another thing is just making sure that expectations are set very clearly during training and onboarding about exactly what the role will entail, and investing a lot in team members' development, whether it's professional development, skills training, but making them feel like they're earning beyond just their salary with this role. All right, how did you handle the typhoon in July in the Philippines? That was a very tough one. In the Philippines, it's part of the Circle of Fire, lots of typhoons, earthquakes, volcanoes in that region. And that comes along with business continuity planning when working in that region. Actually, in 2020, right before the pandemic, I flew out of Manila 2 hours before the tall volcano erupted. But with the recent typhoon just last month, we were very intentional at NeoWork with setting up our teams in pods. So they work remotely, but in close geographical distance within Metro Manila and Naga and Cebu in the Philippines. So that whenever there is an extended outage or a natural disaster, after things have cleared up, but there's still typically a few days of power outages or internet issues, they go to one of our backup sites where they have access to Starlink internet and a generator for electricity as just part of our continuity planning to be able to continue to operate for our clients, and also making sure that we take care of our teammates with food and transportation and any medical needs that they need as well. All right, we're going to shift gears a little bit with this question. Joshua, how do you work through depression as a founder? I spent about 1.5 years of my life in bed in my early 20s in college. It's not a lack of happiness. It's more a feeling of being a zombie. And what I really found through this experience is just learning a lot more about listening to my body and being able to prioritize myself. Honestly, the best antidepressant on the market is exercise, and putting that above everything else, that is a blocked out part of the calendar that can never be moved. And also just frankly, what you're putting into your body as well, being very mindful about that and really listening to your body as well. And hearing those early signs of burnouts and early signs of that internal chatter in your mind, really listening to that and not locking it away and putting it in the basement. Instead, having a good relationship with that depression part of me. What is it trying to tell me? Is it telling me to slow down a little bit here or to be more mindful about my health and sleep? If so, okay, depression is actually trying to help me, this part of me. I often think about Inside Out and having all these little parts of me, if you're familiar with IFS, but yeah, just listening to these parts of me and instead of blocking them away, really embracing what they're telling me. All right, I'm starting my first company. What's your biggest piece of advice? I was late to do this, but I would say really finding your circle of peers. Being a founder is actually a very lonely role. There's going to be a lot of day-to-day things that come up that you can't really share with friends and family without them fully understanding what you're going through. So finding a peer of like-minded founders, I recommend programs like Hampton and On Deck. And frankly, being able to learn from expensive mistakes that they've made in the past and also just confide in the day-to-day CEO shit that comes up, I found to be super helpful for making it through this marathon. All right. Why do you outsource talent from Colombia? Well, besides the amazing empanadas, specifically Medellin, Colombia has become one of the hubs for tech in the whole region. Right now, Medellin and Santiago, Chile are at a war between each other of who's going to be the Silicon Valley of South America. But incredible tech talent here. Also for Spanish support type roles, the Medellin accent, the Paisa accent, universally across Latin America is seen as very appealing. A lot of voice actors are based out of here and is very neutral, easy to understand across all of Latin America and Spanish speakers in the US market. All right, Sophia asks, how does the management structure work with outsourcing? Are they an extension of my internal team or managed through NeoWork? Any advice for success? This is a great question. I've seen a lot of big companies, more enterprise size, make a huge mistake by treating their outsourced hires like a completely separate team, or hey, figure out customer support for me, just handing it off to their plate. This is why it's a recipe for disaster. You really have to have them instead integrate with your internal team, making sure they're aligning with your brand voice, and especially for startups that have dramatic operations process changes day to day, making sure they're in your Slack workspace and up to date with all of those changes. And more than anything, having them feel a sense of ownership of being members of the internal team, part of the Slack community, part of the weekly huddles, whatever you do with your internal team. But yeah, the best way to do outsourcing is to really fully welcome them and make them feel no different than a US-based employee. Again, thank you so much for all the support over the first month, and I can't wait for the future of this series. If I can ever help, please drop me a message in LinkedIn or reach out to us directly on NeoWork.com, and talk soon.